Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. It's time for another episode of Down to the Frame, a series where we pull anime clips into the editor to look at forwards and back, all around, frame by frame, for the sake of criticism and appreciation. Today we're looking at the wonderful Violet Evergarden, literally one of the most beautiful anime I have ever seen in all 28 years of my life. So today's a real treat, especially because this is a spoiler-free video. I won't be talking about the plot other than the first 2 episodes, and any clips beyond that are without context. Thus, hopefully, if you haven't seen this show yet, these clips will convince you. Now let's jump right on in. Now this first shot's introductory. It shows off Violet walking with her major, Gilbert, in the military. The reason I chose this shot in particular is because of how brilliant it handles lighting, as well as focus. In this case, it's a flashback, so it's a very dreamlike sequence of sorts. Very bright lights, very gorgeous, and around the corners of the frame we also have beautiful blurring and smearing. Every frame of this anime, even shot on 2s, is ridiculously smooth, silky, and gorgeous. Now, Violet Evergarden, compared to some other shows, is actually trying to be way more realistic. So when I mentioned before that sometimes anime cut corners by using motion lines and other things, like the next video in the series, Gurren Lagann. Here, we don't see as much of that because they're really going for the more photorealistic. So in this case, we don't see very much ice skating in her movement. Again, this shot is just amazingly beautiful. The bright lights in the background oversaturating the frame, and they're blurred out so we can see Violet just bathed in light. Gives a sense of innocence as she turns her head. And again, every little motion, there's so much detail here that her hair, her clothes, especially the clothes in this series, move very dynamically. She finds this glorious pendant that reminds her of his eye color. Now this looks like something right out of Mononoke, the kind of moving effervescence of this beautiful pendant. And this just warms her heart. She doesn't understand these feelings yet, but she's clearly very fond of the Major. And this feeling of putting your hand to your chest, this becomes a very central visual theme throughout the anime. Just emphasizing the way his eyes look within the pendant itself. So we've got Violet waking up after the war's over in a hospital. This is just amazing how much attention Violet Evergarden takes to drawing fabrics and cloth. Everything is just so organic. The number of folds, the way that they move, and just such a simple, subtle gesture as her looking up. The way that the pillow moves and squishes as she presses her head into it on the right side here. The way the blanket travels with her as she stretches it. It's just all so detailed and would be very hard to animate. You'll find many anime avoid this type of shot or cut corners in some other way, but not here. Now I'll admit this is more impressive typically when you do it in camera because a long, uninterrupted sequence is extremely hard to do in live action, but here it simulates that effect. Violet is going for the paper, but the wind blows, sends it off. Whee! Out the window. Across the mountains. Into town. It's blown away by an airplane. Flies into an alleyway. And flies past this returning ship with so much festivity and celebration, all in this extremely brilliant zoom-out shot. Now, I'm almost certain a lot of these people are probably CG characters, but even if so, you would never really know because they're perfectly integrated. The fact that there's so much motion going on, that the smearing and the blurring hides that fact. Just gives a huge sense of scope and scale. And the lighting, the lens flares, the different colors. Oh, it's just so beautiful. So this is Violet realizing she doesn't have the pendant. It was somehow lost. She wants to go and try to retrieve it. She's gonna go run for it. She stopped midway. Ex-Commander Hodgkins here is trying to help Violet, give her some cute plushies, adorable things. He has no idea what he's doing, really, but he's taking in this girl who otherwise lived pretty much exclusively by following the orders of her major. And so she has a very childlike, innocent reaction to certain things. She's not a very social person. So that's just fucking adorable. She kind of suckles on it, which is, again, extremely childlike, very adorable, very innocent. KyoAni was not afraid with this show. They're like, oh, let's do an entire scene with everything blowing in the wind on a boat? Fuck yeah. So everything's just so dynamic. Every movement they have, every piece of fabric and cloth and hair, is long. Picks up on every bit of the wind. Takes a lot of detail. And that water, man. Looks like a frickin' paradise right there. Even the still shots have a lot of gorgeous motion. In here with her salute, all the parts of her body that are, loose, like her hair and her clothes, as soon as she stops abruptly, have a bit of a recoil where they have to, keep going. Sort of like pendular motion. So she spills her tea right here, and it's like kabloosh. The layering of the light. You've got, your highlights, your darks, your mids, all just cascading together into this very amorphous shape that emulates, the curvature of the glass that it's in. And it expands, as it's falling out. It's very realistic looking. She's putting on her gloves, which cover up her new mechanical arms. What I like about this shot is it continues on. Even after we see her doing the detailed motion, they could just put her out of frame. But no, they choose to put just as much movement into her being in the foreground, blurred out, to just give, again, that sense of cinema, the sense that, these people really are occupying the same organic space. Violet yearns to see the Major again. She doesn't understand why she can't yet. So it's just this glorious running motion. The sequence of shots is nice. The door opening, her flying out of it, his reaction, and her arrival. This pause before she adamantly steps forward. You can definitely see the sense of weight here, that she kind of has to shove her body forward. The way the foot presses down, this is a real human being. Of the camera here, her hair floofs up and then it looks straight up to her head. It actually doesn't, it kind of curves around. The camera work mimics the quality of the movement of the body, which also really helps. Now, I love the lighting in here. The fact that, indoors genuinely are very dark. If you've ever taken a camera inside versus outside, the number of foot candles is, which is a measurement of light, is extremely different. So to have them in just complete darkness and the few parts of the room that are lit are just very well exposed, it creates this contrast that's very nice as they walk into the doll company. And I mentioned before, they'll sometimes use effect lines and smears and things to imply motion. Here, it's very minimal. They just kind of have some slight distortion in the paper. And again, that's because they're going for a more photorealistic effect. The number of frames they use to occupy this paper slap on the back of his head is surprisingly more movement than you'll see sometimes from sword slashes that are faster. Again, you'll see that in Gurren Lagann in the next episode. Violet is now a civilian, and she's trying to learn more normal customs that she never grew up understanding. She's pretty much been a warrior all her life. So I like this shot. She goes for the salute, and then it's just like, she holds herself back, and she doesn't know what else to do. It's very sad, but it's very communicative. And of course, along with her innocence, her lack of social understanding comes a lack of humility and embarrassment. So when he tells her, put on this uniform, she gets right to it. This is kind of what you call convenience fan service. But it also develops her character. I'll always argue that this kind of thing is good for anime. It shows that, she's been through war. We can see what that looks like on her body. And it also says a lot about her character that, she cares more about the mission than herself. We see that later when she doesn't choose to eat, for instance, until all the work is done. We also see, how her attitude fits in the scope of her new world with his reaction. Like, oh God, I can't see this, and she doesn't understand the outrage, the wild reaction he's giving. But he knows what's up. Now this is interesting because they're using a time-lapse here to convey the passage of time. It's also interesting to see it done in animation because it's a simulation of a time-lapse, which normally you would create by taking a picture every 5 minutes, every so often, and then running them together at a solid frame rate, which makes the clouds move extremely smooth, accelerated. I've come up with a new recipe. Her hair blowing in the wind. It's awesome. Stretching out her fingers. We get to see her, mechanical arm in full motion now. I love how they convey this mostly without CG. Instead, they just do very solid lighting work. And seeing the lights dancing around in the background here of the city just give it a sense of life and vitality. You get some more dreamy flashbacks with her and the Major coming in, hugging her tightly. He doesn't want to look at her like a tool, like a pet, like anything that she was presented to him as. And while she doesn't even understand how meaningful that is, he wants to embrace her fully as a person. But damn, she's pretty badass in the war. I'm glad they're able to show that. At first, when I saw trailers, I didn't know this was such a social anime. I thought it was kind of a, some kind of cyborg kicking ass type thing. I was very wrong. What I like about this shot is its heavy use of smearing dirt. Because during, these kind of wartime situations, that's what's happening. Instead of these big fiery explosions, like a cannon or a larger shot is going to strike down and just shoot dirt everywhere. It's going to be hazy, difficult to see. I also like how she doesn't really shoot people all that often. Instead, she's just going to be like, bam, blunt object. Wata. She swings over his head, but doesn't work. So instead, she uses that momentum to throw her other leg up and hit him. Oh. This guy comes in and bash. Ow. That is extremely visceral. Now to her, this is just how things normally are. And showing the transition from her as this, mechanized weapon almost. At least the way that she acts, into a normal human, is one of the more beautiful parts of the show. And so in her last moments with the Major, he tells her he loves her, and at this point, she doesn't know what that means. Now I like this because of the sheer amount of detail put into the girl's animation in the background, even though she's not even part of the main frame yet. It's very creative that it's kind of like you're seeing something in your peripheral vision, and then until she actually turns to her, you don't see. They could get away with something cheaper, not have her move as much, because she is blurred out in the background with the depth of field. But in this case, it looks more cinematic. This just feels like kind of a KyoAni staple. Just very smooth, very organic movement. I feel like you have to do this with every character in anime with glasses. I got glasses. I understand this plight. I understand the struggle. Violet's getting ready to type for the first time. She has to tune her arm. And while this might have been planned in CG, they clearly did a good job of bringing it out with traditional animation. It's very uncanny seeing the individual fingers move like that. Our hands don't quite move that way with just perfect stillness and all the other digits, which brings out the mechanized nature of this hand. So we've got Katalea teasing Benedict here by getting close to Hodgkins. You know, at first, just like a very lofty floof. She puts her weight in and then steps forward, which just matches what we're seeing here to what's about to happen. As a character winds up for a movement and then actually does it, there's a huge payoff. And I like this movement here where she's kind of like wiggling and hugging him at the same time. It makes it feel very smooth that her head, her arms, and Hodgkins' shoulders are rotating at slightly different points. One just after the other. One starts, notice her arm starts, his shoulders come afterward, and her head comes flying by last each time. So it has this sway to everything that's happening. This guy's gotta be taught some manners, he's a douchebag. No touch the violet. I love the way the camera implies a lot of the movement there. It's like the camera has to swoosh around, as well as her going around him. The two together make it seem like a pair, and it's a lot more dynamic. And just mash. Now we've got this rich bourgeois girl who doesn't have the nerve to damn tell the truth. She's kind of a tease and wants to play around, and as such, Violet just totally doesn't understand her and her emotions until she breaks down crying and is finally honest with herself. And how the number of noddings each time, every time she nods forward, you know, her hair is just bouncing in all the chaos. There's turbulence. Now, anime characters often have very large tear ducts. They're just very huge streams of tears, but it's also very pretty. Like it's just slow walk going into a full-on sprint. And there's a lot of distress on her face, the different lines they use here. Look, it's normally where you'd put like a blush or something, but in this case, it gives off a sense of fatigue. And again, the beauty of Violet Evergarden shines through in its animation of fabrics. So we get some wet fabric here, as they have a scene out in the rain. The way they handle the rain here is that she has, you know, a white shirt, and as a result, you can see through it somewhat. You can see where sort of the skin begins and where her arm then transitions. Back to that theme of kind of gripping that spot where she would keep the pendant normally. Right there, close to her, where it kind of warms her heart, is a sign of determination for her. So even though she seems to suck at being an auto-memory doll, at writing letters to convey people's feelings, she still wants to do it. She still wants to learn what it means when someone says, I love you. Now, don't we all wish, like, a parting in the clouds and a beam of light would come down on us whenever we make, like, an important decision in our lives? That is a bit exaggerated and almost cliched here, but I absolutely love it. Now here we've got a shot of Artoria from Fate Stay... never mind, this is still Violet. Everyone jokes she's like Full Metal Saber or whatever, but this show is so much more than that. I do admit I love that part of her character that looks kind of Artoria-esque, but she's in her main outfit now, which is just one of the most gorgeous dresses ever. There was somebody at Colorado Anime Fest wearing this outfit, and I have them in my video. You can check it out. It's just gorgeous. It feels very portrait-like, very kind of hallmarky almost in a way, that we've got this blur on the left side, just focusing on one specific area. The depth of field has been, you know, shallowed to an extreme point. I love how the ribbon falls. Every time she moves, things have to equalize, as it were, and settle their inertia. I love how there's a light shining through the window that highlights her in just this sort of halo of, brilliant white. She Lights up. Got this amazing skirt foof. Then her hair does the same thing there. I ask you, are you my master? Yup. One of the coolest outfits in all of anime, I've gotta say. I just love it. It's so beautiful. And Hodgkins found the pendant. Yay! And of course, that's gonna mean so much to her. Even the most smooth and gorgeous anime like this still tend to animate, you know, the eye shines in a situation of true emotion or determinism or sadness with just 2 frames, jumping back between 2 specific frames, back and forth. This is also a very realistically lit shot. You wouldn't see much of her, it's just so dark. She holds it up, stares at the pendant. Every time she moves it around, it's just this so shiny. The reflections just twist. It's sort of like the closest thing you'd get to Hoseki no Kuni without actually going full CG. And again, she doesn't understand her feelings just yet. She just knows she cares and is just contemplating them. And then in a childlike fashion, ow, it's just such a nice, adorable gesture. Let's take a look at the opening. This is a beautiful shot. We got some particles in the foreground, huge field of grass, and really good wind physics on Violet and her clothing. So each individual strand evolves. When you think about it, how many different pieces of her hair are moving at any given point? You know, you've got this piece, this piece, this piece, this one. We got here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, just so many that all have to move independently and wave out from each other. This shot is awesome for its lighting. It senses this sort of pulsing luminescence. It almost feels like, you know, old film, having a hard time capturing the exposure. They decided to make one extremely smooth motion. You can't see the full weight of just how smooth it is until you start scrubbing it like this. Got her falling forward, her hair, her clothes. That is insane. You know, the number of clothing flaps that we've got here. We've got sort of this movement along the shoulder pad. Got 2 individual strands right here where it's tied the pendant, the handkerchief, the collar. Backside here, every single piece is constantly moving very smoothly. We even have parts of her skirt down here which you don't even see in frame yet. While her hand isn't moving as much as, say, her clothing, the light refracting off of it is still extremely detailed and creates a very circular motion. Her skirt is kind of like waves on the ocean. Oh, don't. Take 2. This lake is fantastically beautiful. Holy shit. We've got this girl with the parasol watching the miracle of flight, which later gets emulated at the end of this particular episode. As Violet goes around to the other side of the lake. Doo-doo-doo, doo-doo-doo. This is probably my favorite animation of the entire show. She gears up, winds up, charges forward, goes sprinting forward for one amazing leap. And then she takes flight. I love how it starts out fast and then slows down with a deceleration, as if time is stopping and slowing down. That is one hell of a jump. Holy shit. She cleared over half the damn thing. A reflection in the water, Just everything is just extremely beautiful. The impact grows, it's huge. You see this great shine on the individual droplets of water as they're being torn up, just brought into the air. Just her momentum has fallen. She lands on a single leaf. And again, continuing probably the most beautiful shot I have ever seen. I don't think I'll ever be able to watch this sequence, this episode, without crying. Just like this guy. He gets it. But of course she's not flying. Floof. She hits the water. She all wet. But I love how clear the lake is. And here she is, proud of pretty much how far she was able to jump. It is very impressive. And on to the credits. Again, just more wowing you with the blowing of fabric in the wind. Sheer attention to the amount of detail in the movement because there's so many moving pieces of every shot of Violet. I love how delicate this sequence is. You know, she holds out her hands and it like floofs out her hair. And when she clasps her hands over the keys, her hair just settles down. If you didn't think she looked like Saber already, that's probably going to convince you. I love the light shining through the trees. I could literally watch this shot like all freaking day and not be bored of it. So I guess thank you, Netflix, for bringing this over. All of us poor people who didn't get to watch it in simulcast in the US without pirating will be able to watch it, and I believe in English dub. I have no idea how good it is, but that'll be out hopefully very soon as the series just finished airing. I recommend this anime to everyone. For me, it is an absolute legendary. And I can't wait until the Blu-ray releases. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to support the channel on Patreon and subscribe to Otaku Daikun for more anime content. Be sure to let me know in the comments which shows you want me to cover next on Down to the Frame. It can be anything from great animation to awful, horrible animation. It can be a movie, it can be a series, anything you'd like. Just be sure to specify which moments and which scenes impress you most. Until next time, celebrate your fandom.